Hello, I'm Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share educational videos on a variety of topics. Today, I wanted to share a few quick tips on how teachers and parents can prepare for the upcoming school year. Many school districts are beginning to decide what their options are for the new school year. A lot of this is going to be flexible because it's going to depend on what the governors say, on if the federal government sets any restrictions or limitations on a return to school, and really what parents are most comfortable with. And so tip one is to get comfortable with uncertainty. This is an uncertain time. Like, things are not going to be exact. You're not going to be able to have an exact plan because there's a lot that's out of our control. And when things are out of our control, that's when anxiety can creep in. Anxiety really wants control. Anxiety is about trying to help you survive. And so it's going to be really important to make these decisions with a clear head and with a calm heart, from a place of peace and not from a place of fear, which sounds a bit odd because there are lots of things about our current situation that triggers fear. And so I'm going to have a whole separate video, probably in the next few weeks, on how to manage anxiety. Tip two is to have a plan for how you would handle it for you and your family if someone did become ill or if you did have to quarantine for a period of time. Where would you go within the house? What would you do? What would you need to make sure that your basic needs were met? And have a plan in place just in case. Because we know with the return to school, late August to September, a lot of kids get sick in general with regular germs. And so a lot of people are probably going to have a lot of fear with going back to school. And if you do start to have concerns about if you're feeling sick or how things are going, please remember that emotions have a physical manifestation, where there are times when you can get so stressed that you get a headache. And one of the symptoms of coronavirus can be a dull headache. Make sure that you're monitoring certain things, like, are you dehydrated? Have you been taking care of eating? Like, self-care is going to be so important, and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. So I wear glasses, and even this past week, I ended up developing this weird headache, and there was a few hours where I was thinking, am I getting sick? Like, what's going on? And turned out I needed to put my glasses on because I've been looking at screens all day and I was starting to get that eye strain. And so if you do have a way to communicate with your child's pediatrician and also with your medical doctor of how should you handle it if you do have concerns about sinus infection or like about any other things, like how is your doctor handling sick appointments and how are they handling well child appointments as well. I know locally some pediatric offices are starting to prepare for the school year by having rapid COVID testing available, where you'll have the results a little bit faster. And people do generally know that sometimes the faster you get the results, sometimes the accuracy for that test may go down. And that's where people are just going to have to monitor situations and doing it from that clear head, from a response and not a reaction out of fear. Because when we react out of fear, that's where we might make an impulsive decision or not really follow sound medical advice. Tip three is to manage your own emotions and seek support when you need it. And that could be technical support. So there's a lot to learn with Zoom. And I think schools are going to be providing teachers with additional training, with additional professional development, because many teachers aren't used to teaching either 100% online or even 50% online. And sometimes the structures that we use aren't always built for the number of people that are on them. I know when I started doing telehealth back in March, there were certain platforms that would crash regularly just because everyone was trying to get on at the same time. And then those networks were able to get additional servers. They were able to boost their capability to handle the amount of people that they had on their networks. There may be resources available if you need assistance with internet or with certain financial things. And so you'd want to search locally what was available to you. There are lots of resources online. And then sometimes the school may also have resources for families. I know in our area, some families that qualify for Medicaid are eligible for either free or reduced Wi Fi. You may also need some emotional support. And so that's where reaching out to your support group, to your network, seeking counseling if it's needed, partnering with a coach, figuring out what you need to be able to be the best teacher, parent, because kids pick up on the emotions of adults. They feed off of it, really. And making sure if the adult is frustrated and angry, the kids are going to be frustrated, angry, and all over the place. Like, really, the adult has to be regulated in order to have a more regulated classroom. Tip 4 is to make sure that your work environment is conducive for learning. And so if your kids are doing things from home, making sure that they have a defined workspace and kind of separating their workspace from their sleep and play if you're able to. Even if it's a small corner within the house, not like a secluded corner, but even if it's one section, being able to set up a space that's conducive for learning. And I think all families should think about or start setting up that type of space, because there's a chance that almost every school at some point may have to shut down certain classrooms. And so having that already in place makes it so you're not rushing at the last minute to try to set something up. I recommend having the computer or tablet in a space where you can see it from wherever you're working, or so that the adults are aware of what the kids are doing online. That can help them stay on track a little bit better, even if they're using headphones, but just so that their monitor is in a space where it can be easily viewed, or if they are doing school within their room, making sure that they keep their door open, and you'll want to check on them periodically just to make sure that they're staying on task. And if you're a teacher, I'd recommend some physical activity. So if you're doing an online session, having all the kids stand up. All right, now let's, and trying to incorporate some physical things within your lesson, because just sitting and looking at screens for long periods of time, that can get very boring. And so making sure that you're able to be engaging. Some platforms allow for people to post appropriate to do polls, or you could do quizzes. And so learning what some of those things are on Zoom, or if you're using Google Meet, or whichever platform you're using, learning what some of the interactive things that you can do, that'll help make it more engaging for the students. And if you're a parent that's decided to homeschool during this time, or already homeschooling, there are lots of additional tutoring options, and the school district may offer some supports. You'll just have to see what's available in your area. Tip 5 is to make sure to set clear expectations and boundaries. I'm a little concerned with things online because kids have ways to go around whatever boundaries and limits adults set up. I have a video that talks about social media and kids and teens, and how you can kind of monitor their interactions online, while knowing that they often find ways around whatever limits and boundaries adults set up. And so making sure that the students know if anyone is ever bullying or harassing you, having things in place for them to talk with their parents, talk with the teacher, making sure that they're reporting whatever is going on, and really having an open conversation about the difference between tattling, reporting, and snitching. And so reporting is making sure that any safety related information, if it is something that is harming someone physically, emotionally, socially, that information is always reported to someone. Tattling is just kind of wanting to get someone else in trouble, like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna tell, ooh, they weren't doing this, but it's more about getting someone else in trouble. And snitching is about me getting out of trouble. And so if I was pulled over by the police and someone else was going way faster, it's me getting mad, like, why didn't you get them? Like they're so snitching is trying to get someone else in trouble to get you out of trouble. And so just making sure to have those conversations, because often kids think just saying anything about what's happening with peers is snitching or is wrong, versus making sure to be aware and monitoring safety. Often in some of the platforms, people are able to private message without the teacher being aware. And if there are ways to shut that off, if there are ways so that you're aware of what's happening within the chat, schools setting things up to be able to monitor safety. And of course, making sure that everyone in the session needs to be in the session, making sure that kids are dressed just like they would dress for school, that you shouldn't be in your pajamas, that you need to be fully dressed. And so just making sure that those things are in place, I think will be helpful as we enter this uncertain time. Back to number one, preparing for uncertainty. So teacher, how do you handle it if the person turns on their camera and they're not appropriate? Like making sure that there are things that the teacher then shuts off their camera, messages them if they need to reach out to make sure that, hey, things have to be appropriate in order to be online. If there's a way to set out some of these expectations up front, I think that's helpful. But with the way things are going, I don't know how much is going to be able to be provided in advance, since things are really up in the air. Which leads me right into tip number 6, which is be flexible. So anxiety, uncertainty, all of those things, the more rigid you are, the more pain you're going to feel. And that's why I start with accept the uncertainty. And then tip 6, where we're kind of wrapping up, is to be flexible, because the harder you try to fight something that you don't have any control over, the more you're going to sink, the deeper, the worse you're going to feel about the situation. Really, if you just kind of take a breath, go with the flow, manage what you can, and remember that the serenity prayer, where you focus on what you do have control over and make changes there, and then let go of the things you don't have control over, and the wisdom to know the difference. I have that posted up in my office right now because I think it's so important with all that we have going on in the world right now. Many of the first sessions may just be, hey, how are you dealing? How are you handling things? Tell me something positive. Teachers and families focusing on the positive. In the midst of all this, there has been a lot of negative, but there have been some positive things. And survival brains, when our brains are in survival mode, the bad sticks out so much worse, and the good sometimes gets overlooked. And so making people look for the good. And so maybe starting with a gratitude moment every morning or something. Everyone share one thing that they're grateful for. At the end of the session, everyone share one thing that they're looking forward to that's appropriate, or one thing that they got out of the lesson today that maybe they didn't know before. Making opportunities for people to focus on the good, that can help, especially since, once again, there's so much that's out of our control right now. And then my last tip, tip number 7, is to watch for warning signs. I'm really concerned because with financial difficulties and people being stuck at home and around each other a lot, that can breed abuse sometimes. And so monitoring for signs that something isn't okay, and partnering with your school's social worker, with the guidance counselor, with anyone that's a mandated reporter, reporting to your local child abuse hotline if you have to, if you are aware that yes, there is suspected abuse, because school is often a safe haven for people that are not necessarily in abusive situations, but maybe toxic or unhealthy home situations. There's a lot of stress right now. And when people get stressed, they often get angry. They often have a shorter fuse. And so finding ways to get help and support for people that need it during this time, I think will be really helpful. Also, with the students, watching for signs of mental health issues, of significant, hey, this kid, they used to be really bubbly, like something's off, something's wrong, something's not quite right with this student, and being able to reach out to guidance, to a local counselor. I would recommend that schools have a list of child and adolescent therapists in their area, psychologists that can do assessments, just because there's going to be an increase in mental health due to the concern that with the increased stress, people that may not have the resources to cope and manage what they're experiencing may need some additional support. And then I also know teachers, so teachers can burn out too. And that goes back to my Helpers Need Help Too video, making sure that teachers, parents, that you're taking care of you and seeking help, support, counseling when you need it. So this school year is going to be interesting. Be prepared for uncertainty, to not know. And that's a great chance for the adults to monitor for the children how to handle uncertainty. Children are often better at adjusting and adapting to things than adults, because adults get stuck in their ways. A teacher who's been teaching for 20 years is like, I've never had to do this before. Like, often them adjusting is a lot harder than the kids, but the kids need to learn how to do this from the adults. And so that's why I speak mostly to the adults about managing you, creating safe space, and then seeking support when you need it as well. I hope this was helpful. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you can click that little subscribe button. If you like this content, you can click like and make a comment. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.